What up, guys? Hey, what up? Today was definitely an interesting kind of day, I gotta say. It's kind of a little bit of a range bound kind of day if you look at SPY, ES for that matter. Some decent names had some decent morning runs per se. I think you had the nice little morning pop on Tesla. You had a little morning pop also on Netflix, kind of held for most of the morning. So some nice movement. I know that we pretty much had that slaughter basically midday, right around that lunch hour. But then I kind of came out here on live yesterday, and I kind of mentioned I talked about the fact that I was not expecting Tesla and Nvidia to kind of give us that big hype that I think everyone was watching for. I think everyone wanted that explosion ahead of the Tesla split. You wanted to see Tesla go just bonkers. Ahead of Nvidia's earnings, you expected it to go bonkers. I don't think you necessarily got both of those things. You could probably say the $19 pop on Tesla was maybe a decent move off of it, but that was just a little bit more of a chop fest once it ended up completing that $19 move. There wasn't too much left on the bone on that one. So I kind of expected that. I did expect a little bit more of a green or of a red day. I thought we would actually get more slaughter today, but it was a hell of a damn price action that we had. Apple, the relative strength that it showed pretty much out the gate and continued to hold up, while the broader market was trying to catch up and actually get that reversal earlier on that we saw. Apple. So again, that was pretty much relative strength. Microsoft started to show a lot of weakness. Was able to rebound. So I'm gonna watch to see now. Of course, all eyes are on the chips right now. I want to see how Nvidia is gonna do. I'm kind of waiting to see if the numbers are gonna come out while I'm on live here. But that's gonna be an interesting take to see if Nvidia can actually raise the chips up and we actually hold up as Jackson Hole is also expected to pretty much start tomorrow. So that's pretty much what's on watch tomorrow. Is those chips? I think that's going to be the primary focus. I don't know if necessarily everyone's going to have their eyes on that Tesla split start that's expected to start as well tomorrow. It's going to be a little funky. We're going to have to see exactly how that ends up playing out. Now, I do expect Tesla to get a pump, or rather, still pretty much get a decent rally, if you want to say. The only thing is that I don't know if it's necessarily ready to start just yet. I do think that you pretty much need to see a pretty much strong dip in the overall markets before you pretty much see a broader market rally out of Tesla, with probably the chips and the tech sector following. So that's pretty much something I think. I don't expect it to be an immediate good reaction off of the stock split, and I don't think Tesla's actually responded in recent history to good price action post split. So that's something to just keep in mind. I don't wouldn't necessarily try to force a situation there on Tesla tomorrow. I would probably let it play out, probably maybe late in the morning. We'll see how it pretty much ends up reacting off of that split, see how the flow is coming into it, and then we'll pretty much address it at that point. All right. Getting into pretty much a few things then. I'll get into ES. I was trying to see if we get the numbers on Nvidia, so we'll come back to it. We'll see if we get a pop or if we get a drop on it. But I'll come back to that. Getting right into pretty much giving you a market overview real quick as I pretty much just get a broader picture of ES up on my screen here. We pretty much still have the same formation. We are still sitting in a daily descending broadening wedge type of action here. We ended up holding that key support, and that's what I was looking for in terms of our downside this morning. I was looking to break below that 41.18. We were able to hold it and snap back. As you see, the body of today's candle was able to pretty much hold, and we were able to snap back. So what am I going to look for again tomorrow? Obviously, we know where that key level is that we've held back-to-back days. Is that 41.18 on ES here? Otherwise, if we can pretty much break down below the 41.18, then that trades us down towards 40.76. Otherwise, if the chips, as in Nvidia, was able to pretty much raise the market with it, and we also see maybe some back end confluence in terms of Tesla holding up, then we could likely end up seeing us trade up towards 41.88, and there is hard resistance sitting at that 41.90 spot on ES. All right, so that's pretty much just the flip side, both north and south. I'll address how I end up playing it tomorrow. I'm not really swayed one direction or the other. I think that pretty much Nvidia may end up having a bigger say than we think in terms of how this price action plays out. I was favoring the downside going into today, but the fact that we ended up holding that level back to back days, that 41.18 spot, leads me to say that we're likely going to trade up to the 41.88, 41.90, and then that's going to be where the rug pull is likely going to end up happening. I don't think that we get a landslide into close like we had today. We had the nice little meltdown into the close. That last few minutes, then pretty much also showing that Tesla's already showing weakness. I don't think that it's going to be that easy for the bears to pretty much lean into that bear case that we all expect to pretty much happen. I did also see, I believe it's for October 21st, the amount of SMH puts that's literally piling into that expiration is just beyond nuts. But the only thing to keep in mind about is the fact is that it is a far expiration. So I'm sure a lot of those SMH puts that were rolled in there, rather today, between yesterday today, I'm sure a lot of them pretty much are getting premium chopped right now as we literally went up, got slaughtered midday, and then we were able to rebound. So I'm not too confident in the fact that those SMH puts are gonna pay right off the bat, or necessarily even within the next 12 24 hours. We may end up having to see that payout towards the end of the week. So I'm not convinced just trying to load in and going right off the bat up, looking at flow. I'm gonna play it level by level. Just taking it 41.18 holds again. We look to pretty much straight up, and we look to break today's high. Otherwise, we are continuation above today's high right off the bat tomorrow. I think that does put us up towards 41.88, 41.90, and then that'll be a beautiful day as the chips are likely going to end up leading on the back end of that. All right. So that's pretty much just I'm not being necessarily biased. I think it's just playing the level by level, and I'm not going to necessarily just follow flow just for the sake of that. All right. Jesse, what's going on? Apple, please. I'll take a peep at it for you. Actually, Apple, I did actually have the Apple trading up too. I was looking at this one. We had a nice little, I want to say it was a smaller time frame. It was about 5, 10 minute time frame. We had a little descending broadening, descending channeling action, and we were able to basically snap out of that, and that's what ended up starting to show relative strength out of Apple. I do actually have Apple as long as this holds 165.76. I have Apple trading up towards that 170 mark basically, and then that's where we should end up getting a breakdown off of Apple. So I can see this trading back up towards that 170. Otherwise, you're looking for the breakdown below 165.76, and that'll put you right down towards 163. All right. So that's pretty much as simple as I can say right now. Obviously, you can see that you had this little, basically making lower lows these past 3 days here. Actually, you can say the past 4 days for that matter. And so I'm gonna look to see if we end up snapping back. But of course, that's gonna be contingent upon how the market ends up rebounding, and if that's gonna be on the back end of Nvidia pretty much raising up the chips along with the broader market. All right. Let's see. AAPW, what's going on? AA, you said MU. I haven't looked at this one in a while. I'm not gonna lie. MU's kind of been on my back burner. There's nothing there that pretty much told me that I wanted to look at it necessarily. I saw that it was kind of making the same formation as is Nvidia currently sitting in right now. You basically see a little bit of a double type of action here. It's a double top off of this daily here. You have the neckline, which you're basically just breaching below as you snap back below that neckline that's sitting at that 5780 spot. Now, looking at this, and this is why I would say, no, I think there's all reasons to point to Nvidia going down as well, is because from a technical standpoint, it has the same bear setup, and that is essentially a double top. You can see the left top here dating back on August 4th. You have the right top sitting here from August 15th, and you have the defined neckline that's sitting on August 9th. And so you should typically end up breaking below the neckline, and that should cause you to have the meltdown to the downside. Now that's going to be again contingent upon whether Nvidia ends up playing out. So just saying it level by level. If we get and we confirm breakdown under 57 half, then you're looking to trade this right back down towards this 55 mark. So under 57 half, you trade it down to 55. Otherwise, if this invalidates the double tap action here, and we see the sympathy out of Nvidia carrying the chips to basically newer highs here off of today's price action, then I would be targeting up towards that gap fill here, which I think is very easy to be filled if chips can overall pretty much rally, and we should see this trade up towards 60 low. All right, but that's just giving you level by level. We need to see how Nvidia is going to end up acting with sympathy towards these other chip names, Micron, AMD, and all those sorts. All right. But that's a level by level. Giving you guys just a quick glance of what I was going to look at. But Cass, could I do Amazon? All right, let's take a peep at Amazon. I guess everyone wants to look at tech today. Is that the most interesting thing right now? All right, so a few levels sitting below. I think obviously that's pretty much the most important part of Amazon. I believe that Avery is actually sitting in Amazon puts overnight. I think he swung some 130 puts, which I can't blame him. Of most of pretty much the tech names, I think I'm more bullish on Amazon right now. You have the beautiful rounding top action. You could say somewhat of a cup, inverted cup right now. I don't know if it's necessarily going to make a handle. That'll be the interesting part if we do get a handle off of this. But I do see pretty much you have support sitting right around this 132 half. That's ideally where you want to see this breakdown. You pretty much get the break below 132 half, and that's where you come in right into that support sitting at that 130.05, which pretty much aligns with the same put. I think that Avery's actually holding right now is the 130 puts. All right. So that's pretty much the same level that he's watching. Under the 130, that's when things get really disgustingly ugly because then you're looking at taking another 4 point move to the downside, and it's going to be looking at support at 125.81. All right. Otherwise, you pretty much want to reclaim today's high at that 135 half, and then you could trade this up towards the gap fill that's sitting at 138. All right. And that over today's high, that's about a $3 move north that you're looking at into that gap fill. All right. Let's see what else you guys mentioned. TY Tesla. Tesla has a stock split tomorrow. I was pretty much saying yesterday that I didn't think that Tesla was going to get too much of a movement off of this before that stock split. I don't think that everyone piling into that and expecting that was going to necessarily happen. You had the little $19 pump that you got, but as you can see, it faded all that entire move, and I'm sure it ended up trapping a lot of call buyers that were sitting there anticipating this to go more than $19 high on the day. So that was pretty much just disgusting on that price action. 902 was that big level to me that needed to pretty much hold. And since that was not able to hold, I think that was the level that ended up causing that rollover. And you see it basically close almost near flat on the day. All right, so 902 was that level. That's again going to be the level here going into tomorrow. Let's see if we can basically break back over 902. You got some resistance also sitting right around that 899 spot. So 899, 902, that's going to be the very tough range. I think you saw that earlier on this morning. That's where we kind of chopped for quite a bit before we got that bigger push in continuation up for to be up $19 on the day. All right. Otherwise, if you can't even get close enough to reclaiming over 902, that's when the breakdown starts to happen. That's when the relative weakness that you see into the close here today is likely going to come into play. We'll look for the rollover under 886. And then I think under 886, that's when the rug pull starts to really happen. And this trades down to 855 rather quickly. All right. So up downside, of course, the rug pull is going to be a lot greater than any kind of upside action here at this point. So I do think that if you're favoring one direction or the other, I think the upside is limited, but the downside is a lot more greater. All right. Let's see. Nvidia's dumping. That is not good. Uh, I mean, it's not that bad. I thought when you said dumping, it was already down like $5. That's not bad at all. I think we need to see. They probably want to hear guidance more so, and I'm assuming that the numbers probably were already released on Nvidia. I'm sure that they want to hear guidance. What is the chip demand going on right now? What is pretty much how is crypto also impacting them as well? I think those are things that really matter to them right now. I don't think this is necessarily a bleed out GS yet. I think this is something like on the back end where you can pretty much rebound. But how they're going to say about the chip demand moving forward, their guidance, and how they also pretty much say the demand as it relates to crypto is going to be what's more key and more important on the video here. All right. But I think the most glaring thing as I'm looking at the chart right now, of course, is that gap fill that you have below sitting at 160 that it enters. That's pretty much the most glaring part. So if this ends up rug pulling, then I do think that this is really going to drag down pretty much the broader market. That's when we're going to see ES and SPY basically start to really trade down tomorrow. We're going to see that rug pull. We're going to see those October SMH puts really start to pretty much pay out because that's going to be pretty much just a nasty rug pull right down into that gap fill. And that's not going to be pretty. So this is another one that just pretty much points out the fact that the downside is greater than what your potential upside is looking at. Otherwise, just to give you a quick point, if we do get a nice little pop off of this, you are looking at pretty much two pivotal levels here. I could say above the gap filler for that matter. You have the gap fill sitting right over 175, which I think that could pop easily if we do end up seeing this go green. But the two key levels I'd be watching is 181.31 and 184.73 for your overhead resistance. All right. Let me get back to looking at some of the tickers you guys mentioned real quick. Aman, you mentioned V and CrowdStrike. These are two tickers I haven't looked at in quite a minute either. One thing that I could pretty much say right off the bat is just noticing you have a beautiful trendline support that you basically cracked below. off of Visa here. So you ended up cracking below that trendline support. I would anticipate that you likely end up retesting that trendline support as a resistance, in which your overhead supply is sitting right at this 210 spot. 210.34 is what you're looking at for your overhead resistance, and then you should see the continuation back to the downside. All right, so 210.34, and then that brings you back to your leg down, and then you're gonna look to see if you find some meaningful short-term support sitting down at 201. All right. Other one you mentioned was CrowdStrike. Another one I haven't looked at in a hot minute actually. Let's see what's going on with CrowdStrike. Ew, this formation's a little disgusting. What I could say is that one thing that's pretty much glaring is you have a pretty noticeable overhead resistance here, sitting at this 201 spot. So that's pretty much one thing that actually stands out is that 201 supply right there. So you have pretty much a well-defined overhead resistance. Now, what I could see actually playing out here is that you have potentially a little bit of a head and shoulders type of action playing out. That's something that's maybe a little bit noticeable. And I'm just gonna freehand this little head and shoulders type of action. So you kind of just get what I'm looking at. If I kind of just draw that out really quickly freehand, I do think that you're possibly looking at a head and shoulders type of action playing out here. So I think you may have just hit your peak right here today off of that, what is that, 199 half spot. You couldn't even stretch up towards the 201 supply. So I do think that you likely end up seeing a little bit more of an upside action. If we do get a pop, I think you could take this back up as high as 197 half. But this is going to start to make consecutive lower highs and lower lows as you start to curl back down. And then where your neckline is pretty much looking at for a full on breakdown, you're looking for breakdown under 184. And that's when things are going to start to get ugly. All right. So you're going to look for pretty much, of course, that 197 half. You're going to look to basically set a lower high. And then that's going to be followed by consecutive lower highs and lower lows. That's going to curl this over to pretty much give you that right shoulder to curl back down. All right. Let's see what else you pretty much mentioned. Let's see, V, you mentioned UNH. I feel like I've been looking at UNH pretty much almost every day this week. And I don't know if that was because who. I think that was probably because of Tom. I believe it was. But you're basically right near trendline support. So this is pretty much you had a nice little inside candle here today off of the daily here. So I could see this popping back up if it really truly wanted to. Now in terms of overhead resistance, I do think that your resistance is sitting right around this 538 spot is what I'm looking at. I don't see this necessarily getting over that 538 spot. 538.61 is what I'm looking at. But again, this is one where the downside is a lot more greater. But if you are able to pretty much pop that 538.64 spot, then what could end up happening here is maybe you end up forming a little bit of a head and shoulders type of action. That's the other case scenario if this does go bullish. Now, given the market conditions and the market set to pretty much roll over here soon, I don't think this necessarily has more upside to pretty much get a big enough pop and then to curl and create a right shoulder. So I do think that's pretty much premature. I would look as far as levels, just playing this level by level. I think you wait for the rollover under this 532 spot, and that's where you look to go short. All right. But as long as this ends up holding as it is right now and it continues to hold this 534, this 535 level, I think that's where you pretty much just look to stay clear just because of the fact that your upside is more limited than your downside. And if you're looking to short it, then I would wait and pretty much take this right under that 532 spot, and that's when I would look to go short. All right. You mentioned that Nvidia is dumping and it's still down about $1 and some change. Not too much. I mean, I'm really looking for a bigger rollover that's gonna drag the rest of the semis down with it. This is not necessarily that. I did mention pretty much that I need to see how their forward guidance is. I don't think that's out yet, and that's why we still relatively see that it's still pretty much just relatively flat. I think the market needs to hear how is the crypto demand for their chips and how is the forward guidance for the chips? Is the demand still there relatively? That's when I think we're gonna get a bigger move out of Nvidia. All right. I'm gonna look at the last one that V that you mentioned, EMPH, and I believe this is one you also had me look at before as well. You had a little bit of a nice little bull pennant there. You broke down. I think I remember last time that I actually mentioned that it was gonna end up retesting right around this 294 spot. You got a little bit more higher than that. As it wicked, you see, you wicked up towards 297 half. But the bigger thing is that the body of the candle basically remained below the prior trendline support, acted as a resistance, and that's why you saw the body pretty much close under that prior support level and is acting as a resistance. So I would anticipate this is going to end up rolling over. You look for the breakdown under 287 half, and this should trade right back down towards 276 rather easily. All right. Other than that, again, let's keep an eye out, see how Nvidia ends up doing. I mean, it's still flat to me. I think that we need to hear more. That'll likely be a very telling story. But those of you that pretty much didn't see me talk about ES, as long as we continue to hold this 4118 spot, I think we still have some more upside. I think we can pretty much straight up towards 4188, likely wick up towards 4190, and that's when I think the rug pull will likely end up making a little bit more sense. I don't think everyone pressing into the short here necessarily so quickly, and with all the SMH puts that are being piled in for October, I think they're going to end up killing those premiums before we end up seeing them actually end up paying out. And I don't think the market's necessarily just ready to pretty much drop the rug per se. So it could pretty much go either way. That's why I'm contingent upon seeing how Nvidia does. Is it going to drag the semis? How and Tesla stock split is also going to be post that split. Exactly how that's going to be a reaction. But it's a lot of variables right now. You have the Jackson Hole starting tomorrow, so again, bigger thing that I mentioned is that playing it level by level. We hold 4118, you trade up towards 4188, 4190. Otherwise, your bigger picture is that you're looking for the rug pull under 4188, 4118, and you trade it down to 4076. And that'll be your pretty much your downside move that I think everyone's looking for right now. All right. Other than that, I will pretty much wrap it up right now. I was expecting to see the move off of Tesla here before I concluded, but I guess not. We'll probably have to wait a little bit longer to see how that ends up playing out. But I will pretty much conclude right there. We'll call it a wrap. But other than that, I will see you guys on live tomorrow morning, and you guys stay safe. Later, guys.